2, 1. What's up, Warriors? Today we have a very special guest. My friend Will Lawrence will be joining us. Will is the field marketing manager at UCAN. He's out there sponsoring some of the best endurance athletes around. Will has a pretty strong pedigree. The man has worked with athletes at D1, Exos, and was the assistant strength coach at SMU, Southern Methodist University. Will is also an elite level OCR, obstacle course racer, and a marathoner, ultra marathoner. So Will, if I've left anything out there, please fill in the blanks for us.
You've hit most of it. Before that in college, I was a decathlete at Abilene Christian University, and then got my master's at North Texas, and then I got really lucky and got a job right out of college. I interned with the Stars and got that job at SMU right out of college. So really lucked out there, and just been going ever since.
Awesome, man. Well, so currently right now, what are you training for? Are you in the marathon space, or are you in OCR space right now? I know with the COVID and all that, a lot of events are canceled, but what's your specific training goal right now?
This year, it really hasn't changed because fortunately for me, the race that I'm prepping for, World's Toughest Mudder, which is in Texas this year, which is fantastic. Get to race in my own backyard here in Midlothian, just outside of town. World's Toughest Mudder is not until the end of the year. So it's 6 months away still. So hopefully won't be any, date changes on that.
Yeah.
Wasn't really planning on doing a ton of other races, maybe like 6 other races or so this season, because World's Toughest Mudder is a 24-hour race. It's a brutal one. It's 24 hours of obstacle course racing. So
yeah.
Wanted to make sure my body was in
it took me a second to process that. I was like oh, 24 hours. Yeah
Cool. It's a 5-mile loop.
Yeah, and that's the World's Toughest Mudder, you said?
Yes, World's Toughest Mudder. Like I said, 24 hours, 5-mile loop that you're just trying to get as many of those loops as possible in 24 hours. So I'll be shooting for 75 miles this year at that.
Wow. And how many obstacles are on that course?
It's usually in the 25 to 30 range along that 5 miles. So pretty significant. And what a lot of people don't realize, an obstacle doesn't always necessarily mean some huge rig or super difficult. It could literally be a 4-foot wall. But still obviously requires, some work to do, but, it's not always just great,
some athleticism,
big, fancy,
some strength for sure.
Ninja warrior type of stuff. Yeah. So, but it's a fun one. Like I said, goes all night. So you have to be comfortable, running when you're normally sleeping, wearing a headlamp and things like that. So I'm actually doing not a similar, but just something fun that a friend of mine was doing. At the end of this month, I'll be doing a 4x4x48. So every 4 hours, I'm going to run 4 miles for 48 hours. Just to start getting my body used to running at night.
And when are you starting that?
I'm going to do that the last day of the month. So right here at the end of April.
Very cool. Well, yeah, you should definitely document that on the socials, man. That's pretty cool. That's a big feat. That may not sound like a lot in that time frame, but that That's going to be hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's 48 miles total. So, nothing tiny about it, but yeah, definitely adds up. And again, just something different to, hit my body with. That's kind of my big thing, is trying to be as holistic and, you know, random as possible. I'm not, sticking to just your normal long run, short runs, sprint type of work. Like I said, I've done that in the past. Obviously, for like marathons, it's a little more strict with your training. But for obstacle course, I mean, you got to have a little bit of everything. And again, I try to be as holistic as possible with my training.
Right on. When you're on that 24-hour obstacle course race and you're coming back through multiple times, like, does it get to a point like where you're their third time through where you're like, okay, I know this one now, I've got this down, or is it harder and harder each time you go?
A little bit of both. Yes, you know what to expect once you've been around 5, 6, 7 times. But at the same time, you know, especially in the middle of the night, you kind of just, that's where you really have to have the mental to be able to push through and continue. One, when you would normally be sleeping in the middle of the night, and dealing with that repetition, because you have done that same course so many times over and over and over. So it's not just physical; it's a big mental challenge, which I really, really like. I've hit most of the toughest physical challenges out there, as far as I was a multiple time Ironman and things like that. So I really like the mental challenges along with the physical.
Absolutely. Well, one of the reasons why, other than like, I know you've got this crazy background and you do so many very cool things, but one of the main reasons why I was so excited to bring you on here and talk to you is that I've recently got into running myself. I've never been, a long distance runner. And I have recently, during this whole coronavirus thing, have been back home in Wichita helping my brother-in-law recover from a massive illness, and he's an ultra runner. So
Okay.
once, like, his big goal was to get back into running shape, right? And so as soon as, like, we built up his strength over like 4 weeks or so, 5 weeks, and then he set a date for himself. He was like, I want to start running again. And I think we probably 3 weeks ago, and maybe it was early April. So anyway, he set that date, and he was like, that's the day I want to start running. So, we went out, and he was like, let's just do a 5K. That's like one of the longest I've ever run, is a 5K.
Yeah.
I've not done much more than that. In CrossFit workouts here and there, you'll run 2-3 miles. High rocks,
Right.
I can't remember the total mileage on that, but I was like, all right, let's see where it goes. And so we get done. It was just, I had this feeling of like, oh man, that wasn't that bad. So next day we go out, we did 5. The next time we went out, we did 7, and we kind of tacked it on pretty quick. I mean, he's this, 3.5 miles for him is nothing, but yeah, I mean, it's been amazing for me to really get into this now. And I'm truly getting that appreciation for it. And like you said before, it is a mental thing. It is you versus yourself, right? When you're out there and your legs are hurting when you're going some distance, and I'm still in that accumulation phase where, like, I'm hurting at like 6 miles right now, right? So
Right.
A lot of pounding, I've got 3 ACL reconstructions and a bad ankle, but it's just, it's one of those things. It's like the mind over matter, and keep working through it. So talk about, like, what goes through your mind when you're 15 hours into that thing and you're hurting a little bit. What are you telling yourself specifically, or what do you do to stay in it, stay focused, stay in the zone?
Right. and everybody's different. Um, I tend to, and I'm not recommending this for everyone. You have to kind of find what works best for you. I tend to kind of get, maybe it's because of the type of coaches I had growing up, but I like, if I fall off pace, or if I, kind of, you know, I kind of get down on myself, like, come on, like, quit being a wuss or whatever, like, pick it up, like, you've done
Like, yeah,
harder
like,
than
oh,
this.
you can cuss on here. You can say
Okay, okay,
pussy on here.
okay, cool, yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so I tend to be kind of that negative. Again, maybe that's because that's
Yeah, negative
you know
reinforcement. Yeah, some
that's the
athletes
way that
respond to that.
right. But then
Yeah.
also, I think of, you know, people like my son. My son is in my pit crew, my group that helps me with my food, to change out clothes, shoes, wetsuits. Because during the night sometimes it gets pretty chilly in November. Um,
Hmm.
so, getting in and out of wetsuits, swapping out wet clothes, things like that. I mean, sometimes you get to the point where you're so tired, like, people will have to feed you. So my 11-year-old son's in my pit crew. So that's another one. Be like, hey, you know, show your son, how to be a man and push through this. Think about the people that are
Yeah.
rooting you on. Because I've always been kind of one of those. I don't want to let people down. Um, so it's a combination. Some people like to, run to raise money. That's their big one, for a cause. Um, Others do it strictly. I'm very internally motivated. I'm not huge on external, motivation. So like medals and shirts aren't really a big deal to me. Um, I just want to see what I'm capable of. Um, so mine's a mixture of it. Um, you just got to find what works best for you. And at the same time,
Yeah.
I have a very high pain tolerance. It's learning, how to ride that line. Like, am I hurting or am I injured? Or, I know the difference. Um, and, at first, like you said, just getting going, um, it's best to err on the side of caution. But I've been doing this a long time. I mean, I'm 43 now. I've been racing professionally for almost 20 years, minus 2 years when I was going through cancer treatment. But um, so I kind of know my body pretty well, and it takes a while to learn that.
Okay. Well, hold the phone. Cancer treatment.
Yeah.
I didn't
Uh,
know. I had no idea. Tell me
yeah.
about that.
I'm 9 years cancer free. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer um, over almost 10 years ago now.
Okay.
Um, and went through that. That was kind of a rough patch, and um, kind of lost my job because of it. Because obviously, if you can't coach, you can't really
Yeah.
that's one of those, kind of like a personal trainer or something like that. If you're not physically able to do it, uh, so yeah, kind of a rough patch, and that's another one of those, you know, reinforcement type of things that I'll use on myself. And like, hey, I've been through like the worst, So when I do find myself kind of getting down
Absolutely.
or struggling, I'm like, hey, you've been through worse. So yeah, but I look at it as a very positive. It definitely taught me a lot as far as how I live my life. I really am one of those that believes that, you know, toxic environments and, just your whole system is a big contributor to cancer. Obviously there's outside factors as well, but um, so I've changed like my
Well,
lifestyle, my relationships. Yeah.
take me through the time or the process leading up to your diagnosis of that. Like, how was it detected? How did you know something was wrong? For those that are unfamiliar with like that type of cancer, thyroid cancer.
Um, that's kind of contributes to the whole
I mean,
rough
for
life.
being I would assume at the time you were a very fit guy as well, because you said 10 years now, and
Yeah.
so like the ideal healthy man,
Uh,
and you
yeah.
have cancer.
I
So
was an
take us through like
Ironman.
the process of how that diagnosis.
Yeah, I was an Ironman at the time. I was racing full Ironman races competitively, um, and full disclosure, I was going through a divorce, and so obviously it was a rough patch. Um, I went in for my regular checkup, just because I mean I had always done that. Have a history of cancer in my family, but that's not really necessarily why I was going in. Just I put a beating on my body, so I go into the doc to get checked out and blood work, um, to make sure everything's where it needs to be. So we caught it really, really early, so that like I was able to have like the nodule removed laparoscopically. Didn't have to take my thyroid. At the time, it was more experimental, but the radiation treatment, radiated iodine, since your thyroid helps synthesize iodine, um, and also learned a lot about my diet, changed my diet up significantly. Um, but yeah, found out about it early, was qualified for this new radiated iodine treatment, and was only on synthetic for about a year. And my body actually started producing again. So I have a active, healthy thyroid right now. I'm no longer on synth,
That's
which is rare,
amazing.
but yeah.
And hey, I mean, that's probably like a true testament to the changes in nutrition and how healthy and fit you are in general.
The doctor said, yeah, me being in such good shape definitely helped me bounce back and get through that a lot quicker. Yeah, but also, I mean, my whole family is here, so I had a great support system and things like that going through it as well.
That's amazing, man. And so now you're not on any sort of medication or anything associated with that whatsoever? Like that's
No,
having to
nope.
deal with the
I'm
complications? That's awesome.
correct. I'm completely off of synth. I mean, I take a lot of holistic. I mean, you should see the counter in my kitchen. I mean, I do take a lot of stuff, everything from different herbs to things for my joints, for my blood, things like that. But yeah, no prescription. Haven't had any prescription medications in almost 10 years.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah, man.
something I didn't know about you. I've gotten to
Yeah,
know you, decently well in the last year or so, and wow, that's a pretty motivating and awesome story, man.
yeah,
Well,
and so yeah, changed a lot.
let's backtrack a little bit, and so one of the reasons why another reason why I wanted to bring you on here is because you are a true weekend warrior in the sense of you're out there, even though you work in the industry, working for UCAN, you're out there, you're talking to endurance athletes, you're talking about supplements. You're also a full-time dad, so you're on the road a
Yep,
lot for work. I know you're a full-time dad, and you're doing training. You're training for your own competitions. Um,
yep.
how did this all start? Where did the drive to OCR and like ultra running and stuff like that? Where did that start?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I'm very intrinsically motivated. I started running when I was in like second grade. Um, so I mean, I've always been a runner. I've always, like I said, been very internally motivated, um, and just really, really driven. Um, and, I joke, you know, the reasons why I train is probably 75%, for me, just competitiveness. 20%, fitness. I want to take care of my body, and then maybe that last little bit, just vanity, wanting to look good with my shirt off, those type of things. But um,
Hell
yeah,
yeah, that's always all right, man. I
exactly.
still hit some
You have
bicep curls, even though, we're in a CrossFit space.
exactly.
You
So
look good, you look good, you play good, man.
yeah, exactly. But the biggest, besides just wanting to see what I'm capable of, um, that's my big one now. Back in the day, like especially with like Iron Man, it was just always like I would finish one, and I'm like, I can do better. I can do better than 11 hours. I can do better than 10 hours. I can do better than 9 hours. Um, and so it was constantly just trying to train just to better what I had done before. Yeah, being on
Yeah.
the podium is awesome. I've been on the podium a lot of times, and it's always fun to be up there. But that's like I said, secondary to me, just wanting to push myself. And then different mindset after coming back from cancer treatment. I just I was kind of, I guess, just felt like I had achieved everything I wanted to achieve in Ironman, and a buddy of mine talked me into doing an obstacle course race, which at the time Warrior Dash was the only one really around. And
In what
as
year was this?
I found actually a medal um, cleaning out my garage. It was Warrior Dash. I think it was 2010. So I mean,
Okay.
exactly as I was coming out of cancer treatments, um, and I think I ended up walking part of that one, um, if I recall. But I just thought it was so fun, and as the sport continued to grow, we just did more and more and more, and then when it went pro, I was all over that. So hollered at a lot of my old sponsors and some new sponsors, and that's how I got involved with UCAN, because it's been, I mean, it's one of the biggest reasons why I think I'm still competing at the level that I'm at. So yeah, now it's
So,
just the love of it.
on that like onslaught of like, and in 2010, you say you did your first one, and that Warrior Dash was like one of the only ones around.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of different, OCR companies that exploded. I mean, I think I did my first Tough Mudder in like 2000. Gosh, that would have been 2013, 14, somewhere in that range. And like that
Mm-hmm.
was huge then. Tough Mudder was like the
Yeah.
biggest deal in like in obstacle course racing. And then I feel like kind of it has shifted to like Spartan Race has become like the big one, at least, maybe
Yeah.
that's regional. Since I moved to Dallas, I
Yeah.
never heard of Tough Mudder again. It was all about Spartan Race. So how did you find like the direction and path that you wanted to do? Or did you just like go find any one that was in town and you're like, I'm going to hit this one, then this one, then this one?
Well, any race that was in Texas, I would obviously hit, and then picked kind of destination races. Like, oh, it'll be fun to race in Southern California. Or, oh, it'd be fun to race in Montana, or it'd be fun to race up in Vermont. So I mean, I've raced in most states now. There are some OCR athletes that you know only race Tough Mudder, or they only race Spartan, or they only race Savage Race, or you know Conquer the Gauntlet, or one of the other brands. Again, I like them all because they each have
Yeah.
their strengths. Spartan is definitely more of an obstacle person's race, not quite as much running until you get up into the longer ones. Tough Mudder is definitely more runner friendly. Um, they all have their unique qualities, advantages and disadvantages, and I like that. So again, you know, uh, like with a certain
Pick your
one, if
poison, essentially, right?
yeah, and so you
Yeah.
kind of it'd be like a fighter training for a different, whoever his different opponent is. You're going to train a little bit differently. Like, oh, this guy is this type of fighter. This is how I'm going to prepare for that race. So, again, you need to be as holistic as possible
Yeah.
with your training. So
So
yeah, Spartan's definitely the biggest.
So, and I would agree with that totally. It's like, is pick the destination, right? Like, and do the race. Like, I grew up in Kansas, very flat, not much to see around here.
Yeah.
So like Spartan races here are in like fucking parking lots and shit. So, when I did my first like Tough Mudder, we actually did it outside of Austin, like the Lake Travis area, thinking, oh, it was going to be like this beautiful scenery. Wasn't that great. All the grass was dead and whatever. It was summertime, but it was kind of cool. There was some like, it was a lot more hilly because it was the hill country than like Kansas would have been. Right.
Right.
So it was really cool. I mean, saw some gnarly injuries out on the trail. Like some chick had a compound fracture running down gravel, like, descent. But yeah, it was kind of cool. There was one part where you actually had to climb a little bit, and there was a goat about 20 feet away from us just watching us go by. It's so interesting.
I've had to dodge around cows. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that to people. Is like try and find like a cool area, make a trip out of it. It's a lot of fun. So as you got competitive with this, whereas you weren't just doing it for fun anymore, where it became more of like, okay, I'm good at this. I've podiumed, or I've been, top whatever. Did you take on sponsorships early on, or did you seek out sponsorships?
Both. I mean, when you're on the podium a lot, people will come to you, and I have had, so I have had some of my sponsors that contacted me. I'm a little bit different. That I was a sponsored athlete before OCR, so I obviously reached out to some of my old sponsors, with Nike and with some of my other like nutrition sponsors and things like that. But yeah, also there's some that are a little more specific to obstacle course racing. So just like, with a lot of others, you do well, people are going to come to you and be like, hey, we'd love for you to, wear
how did you obtain those sponsorships early on? And so how did you obtain those sponsorships early on? And what were you doing at the time when you acquired those sponsorships?
My first sponsors were, I was in my 20s, and I was actually playing paintball. Was my first sponsorships ever. I was with a professional paintball team.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. That's awesome though.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
that was with
yeah. I have to ask, did you ever match up against Be Real from Cypress Hill? He's like a competitive paintballer too, right?
Yes, I know, and not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. Hey, for the sake of the podcast, you shot him in the face mask once.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right? I tagged him a couple times. Yeah. I remember. Actually, I'm pretty sure Cypress Hill was still very big.
They were still touring. Yeah.
Yes. This was over 20 years ago. Yeah, I was in my 20s. But,
so you were listening to Cypress Hill as you were getting ready for paintball.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. So those were my first. But from there, it was a combination. There were some that I was really interested in. And so I would reach out to them and, literally send them a resume. And that's what I get now with up-and-coming athletes who want to be like with UCAN or something like that. They're like, hey, here's my resume. And I'm not the person that does that. We have a total badass Katie Vicentin up at headquarters who deals with all that. But
shout out Katie at headquarters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had to give Katie a little props. But so, some you reach out to and tell them what you're doing. And
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
And I'd be remiss if we didn't go a little bit in depth about UCAN and like the products that UCAN provides and the benefits of them. So give us a little like talk about UCAN and you know what UCAN provides to its athletes.
Um, so UCAN is literally the only sugar-free fueling option on the market. Okay. Traditionally, I mean, and I'm one of those. My first marathon, I ran with honey packets, like literally like honey packets you'd get from like a restaurant, and salt tablets.
Popeyes, shout out Popeyes drive through and biscuits.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Grandy's, if anybody remembers Grandy's. But
Grandies.
yeah,
Oh
exactly.
man, yes.
So, so I mean, traditionally, um, runners have fueled with sugar-based products. I mean, that's
Yeah.
gels, that's chews, that's, you know, waffles, whatever you happen to use. You're just burning off simple sugars, which the human body's not really meant to run off of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So as opposed to simple sugars, UCAN uses a slow burning complex carb that doesn't affect blood sugar. So it helps keep your blood sugar nice and steady so you don't have the ups and the downs. Everybody's heard of the bonk. The bonk is because when you take in sugar, your body's normal energy systems stop working, which is to burn fat.
Yeah.
Okay, it's
And
because
I'll
you're just trying
stop
to
you there.
burn off. Yeah.
Not everybody knows what bonking is. I've just recently, and maybe I'm late to the game here, but I just recently
Okay.
learned what bonking is from my brother-in-law who's you
Okay.
know ultra marathon runner. So like, you know, and I had to ask him like so what exactly? You know, so like walk
Right.
real quick,
Okay.
and we'll
So
get back. We'll digress. What's
right.
bonking?
Okay. So with endurance athletes, you know, bonking or hitting the wall, there's, you know, several terminologies for it, is pretty much where your body shuts down. Okay. So like I was saying, when you're taking in sugar, your body's normal response, which is to burn fat as a fuel source, stops working because your body wants to just burn off all that sugar. So you shoot a bunch of insulin into your system. You're doing everything you can to burn that sugar off. Your body stops burning fat. So if you run out of sugar, your body doesn't have that backup system and your body just shuts down. And like people, I mean, I've seen people bonk where they literally have just crumbled to their knees and can't go anymore.
Well, yeah, we've
Um,
all seen those clips where like the marathon runner collapses like as they go to the finish line, or you know
and so it has
the
to
shaky
crawl across.
legs. You know, yeah,
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 yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
that's bonking, and especially with the
Okay,
elites, yeah, they don't have the body fat reserves,
yeah.
and so yeah, you just don't have the energy.
So I do want to talk about diet, but I want to go back to UCAN and dealing with like they're
Yeah.
using it's like a potato starch, right? That is like the main carbohydrate source.
It's
Okay.
a corn it's a cornstarch, but it's not like your typical cornstarch that you would buy off the shelves. It's a patented um, process of heating and moisturizing, and it breaks down as a very it actually changes the molecular structure. It's a huge dense molecule that again
And
breaks down
and that's
so
like your
slowly.
flag and that's like your flagship product, right? What is that called?
Super starch is what
Super
all of our
starch.
products
Okay.
are based around. Super starch.
Okay.
So for UCAN Energy, yeah, you're getting up to you know, we have different serving sizes, but 30 grams of super starch will last you an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on intensity. You would need upwards of 50 to 60 grams of sugar. So you actually get twice the amount of energy, half the caloric intake, which especially for everybody who's like trapped at home right now, like that's been huge for like my family. Um, so like my son, he's not as active. My parents, my sister, you know, things like that, they're not expending as many, they're not burning as
Calories.
many calories.
Yeah.
So UCAN has been huge. Again, help keep your blood sugar nice and steady. without the spikes and the crashes. So it just helps your body work more efficiently. And
So
then,
what's the amount of carbs in a serving of like the energy, let's say like the pre-workout?
right. So like 30 grams of super starch is going to be about 120 calories total.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's
120 calories
all
from it's carbohydrate, but
carbohydrates. Okay.
it's a carb that doesn't act like a carb. 99% of carbs um, cause a spike in blood sugar, right? UCAN breaks down so slowly that it's not going to cause that spike in blood sugar. It just breaks down so slowly. You're pretty much just going to pluck energy off as you need it. So it's not going to be stored as fat, which is what happens with sugars and carbohydrate that you don't use. So it's very unique. So that's, I love Peter Kaufman, one of our founders. That's his big line that I like to use. It's a carb that doesn't act like a carb in the body.
So it's essentially like 30 grams of carbs then, or a little over,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
If somebody's like counting macros, that would be like the carb equivalent would be like 30
Right.
grams of carbs. So
Yeah.
so both like, and you say that lasts like 1 to 2 hours, essentially. That's
Uh,
like what you
30, 30 grams of supercharge, hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on intensity level.
Okay.
And you can actually have of the of our energy, you can have up to 60 grams of superstarch and remain in ketosis because again, it doesn't affect blood sugar, so it breaks down so slowly. You can remain in ketosis. So we have a lot of keto or fat adaptive athletes that UCAN's been a savior for them because any keto athlete who's tried or fat adaptive athlete who's tried to run more than a mile or two has definitely found out the hard way that they run out of gas pretty quick. Plus you're not just completely depleting your body by breaking down muscle tissue. You don't become catabolic or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing because most endurance athletes are very lean, relatively lean. So
Right.
they're the muscle mass is not quite they don't have quite as much muscle mass, but they've got that slow twitch. They kind of get into a fat burning as as you kind of learn exercise physiology. You learn there's carbohydrate burning states and fat burning states, right? And so,
Right.
ideally or traditionally, the endurance is going to be more fat burning. So, a la a keto diet or a higher fat diet for most endurance athletes is probably what you're going to find online, or you're going to find on, somebody's going to tell you. So, but in your personal experience, in your diet, what do you think is the good combination to get through let's just say a marathon that's more relatable to people?
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I've done it both ways. I've done the quote unquote traditional fueling with like gels, um, which for me, I go through a ton because I am a larger runner, 190 pounds.
Yeah,
Uh,
give your stats. Like you're like 6'3", 6'4"?
Almost 6'4", and currently I'm at about 195. By world's toughest mutter, I'll be closer to 190. So still large. And then
And
to give you a frame of reference, like
that's big in like the more yeah, that's
most
big.
of your
That's big
marathoners are
as
like
like
130
as
pounds.
marathoners and ultra runners go.
Yeah.
But as an OCR runner, what's the average size of like a highly competitive OCR obstacle course racer?
Well, again, you have some specialists who do only the longer races, and obviously they're a little bit leaner, not quite as big traditionally. Um, I kind of, I guess, don't fall into that mold. You've got some bigger guys like myself, like say like a Hunter McIntyre, who he's a big boy. He's got some
He's a
muscle on
big
him.
boy. When
Yeah,
I saw him at High Rocks, I was actually like, usually I'm not impressed when I see like somebody like that in
yeah,
person. I'll just be honest, but like I was like, holy shit, that's a big human. Like
yeah.
he's a large dude.
He moves very, very well for such a
Yeah,
large athlete.
he does.
But he
And on the
sticks to the short
the
stuff.
flip side of that, on the flip side of that, like when I saw God, what's his freaking name? It's escaping me right now.
At High Rocks?
Yeah, at High Rocks Blacksmith. What's his name? He's a CrossFitter.
Oh,
God, Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith. Sorry, Chandler, if you
yeah,
ever listen to this,
yeah,
dude. I'm a big fan of his. But like, I wasn't like necessarily like in the opposite way with him. But that dude is so wide. He wasn't
yeah,
necessarily. He's not a tall guy, but I
no,
mean, I was just like, oh my God. And he can move. He can do the endurance stuff. I mean, I
yeah,
know that one was a little hard, but I mean, good God. Like, yeah, anyway, sorry to
yeah.
digress
But yeah,
on
no,
that,
I
but
mean, but yeah, that's
so
you know. But Hunter sticks to
you
shorter
are
distance.
categorized as a bigger athlete. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you're a
I'm not a
bigger athlete
Clydesdale,
when it
but
comes to that, and when it, yeah. But I mean, I think it, you know, I think and you may agree with this, that like bone structure and musculature has a lot to do with it. Like even though
for
you're
sure.
a taller athlete and way more, you're still a very like long limbed, lean person. So like you still, to
Yeah.
me, in my eyes, would fit into that endurance athlete rather than, I wouldn't put you in a powerlifting competition, obviously.
No, no, no,
Just
no.
because
Yeah,
your bone structure is just not meant for it. Your levers are too long. It's
right,
too far to
right.
go on a bench press. It's too far to squat. You know what I mean? Whereas
Exactly.
that short,
Exactly.
squatty guy, he literally has to go 4 inches when he squats. You know, like it's just,
Yeah, I
it's
got to
not
move that weight
fair.
a lot
And
longer.
yeah, I'm not as tall as you, but I'm built a little
Yeah,
similarly. You know, it's just like long limbs, long ass arms, long legs. Like, you know,
yeah.
it's just too far to go on a lot of that stuff. So, um, so
So
you
yeah,
know,
so
like,
going back to the marathon and the running, fueling, um, I mean, traditionally, like I said, I would be taking in roughly like 60 plus grams of sugar, you know, every hour and a half or so. I mean, I was burning through 300 calories or so, um, about every hour. I'm doing about half that now with UCAN.
when I bet that's so much easier on your stomach too, because I've never taken a goo or anything, but
Yeah.
I can just imagine if you're just pounding those, like your stomach's gonna have to turn over. You're gonna have to like shit yourself or
Yes.
something, man.
Every competitive endurance athlete has had that problem. Has had, you know, either throwing up or the other way around. I mean, we learn not to take in a crap ton of sugar like on our first Halloween, right? You eat too much candy, you get all that
You get
sugar, it's going
sick.
to come out. Right. So, I mean, I've been there. I've had to hit the porta potty in the middle of a race. One of the best athletes in Dallas, Dawn Grunigal, um, who just I think was at her third or fourth Olympic trials for the marathon a few months back before all this went down. Um, Her biggest issue, one of the best athletes out there, but if you can't finish a race because you've got GI distress, it doesn't matter how good you are, right? So she
I
was one of
know,
those
and
when she switched
that's
to
a nice light way of putting it. GI distress, like she had to shit, you know. No,
she
I'm
crapped
just kidding.
herself. Yeah,
Messing around. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, yeah, and we've all been there, dude. All been there. I've had it. Now
Yeah.
I've got a little tougher gut than probably most, but that has been completely eliminated with UCAN because it was actually originally developed for an infant with a very rare form of hypoglycemia. So it had to be gentle enough for an infant's GI tract. So for me, who, you know,
To
grew up in
process,
Texas eating,
yeah.
yeah, eating jalapenos for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, it's great. Um, that's definitely a big one. Definitely a big one. But yeah, I mean, you still have a lot of those traditional
Well, and it
folks
just
that are like, yeah, sugar, sugar, sugar.
well, it just makes sense because like I think like the whole like carbo loading before a race and doing all these things like it's been like so misconstrued over the years,
Very much so.
especially to the somebody that's not in the know or that maybe has gotten some bad information, and I think that
Yeah,
that's probably the part of it. It's not that that person's dumb or naive, it's that they just got bad information. And
yeah,
my biggest advice that I can give to anybody that's in competitive sports is eat the same way you do every single day when you're training or practicing, right? Don't change
yeah.
anything about your diet on game day because
Cool.
you don't know how it's going to react. Like you have no idea
Exactly.
how it's going to react. And especially if you are eating a healthier diet, like you're a lot more in tune with your gut health and with your bowel movements and things like that. So if you're going to straight up, like if I don't eat dairy, you know, at all, and then I'm like, oh, I'm doing a marathon tomorrow, let's go to Pizza Hut and just cram a bunch of pizza. Well, I'm going to feel like absolute fucking
Yeah,
shit because all that cheese that's on the
exactly.
pizza is going to fuck with me the next day. So like
Yeah,
what I would tell people is yes, you should probably carbo load a little bit, but it should be just more of the things that you normally eat, right? Maybe a little bit
right.
bigger quantity.
And what you really want to do now, I mean, if you want to get real more, you know, specific, the 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 old school, like the night before, like I'm gonna have a bunch of pasta and whatever. No, about 7 to 9 days out, I slowly increase my carb intake by about 5% per day.
Okay.
So just to make sure that glycogen stores are topped off, you know, the fuel that's in your muscles that you use immediately. But yeah, just eating a bunch of whatever carb the night before is not good. It's actually probably going to be
Well,
more detrimental.
yeah, especially if you
Yeah,
like it's like loaded with a bunch of gluten and shit that you're gonna have to like try and digest. You know, it's just it's not gonna be good for you. It's
exactly.
gonna be sitting in
Exactly.
your gut.
Yeah.
Um, so are you like in your normal daily diet? Are you um more fat based or more carbohydrates? Like when you're really like in season training, like when you're logging
Mhm.
miles, are you more towards the carbohydrates and you know also taking the UCAN, or is it a little more like fat based and like the UCAN brings in the carbs?
Um, I my dietitian is really good about just, and the reason that I went with her, Rachel Shear. She's based here in Dallas. She's phenomenal. Um, Scheer, Rachel Shear. She's not one of
What's
those
her?
like,
Do you know her Instagram handle?
believe it's Rachel Shear Nutrition, at Rachel Shear
All right. Well,
Nutrition.
we'll find it and I'll
Yeah,
tag her in it. But yeah.
but she really, really helped me. Gosh, when did I first meet with her? A few seasons ago, 2 seasons ago. Um, I'm not. I don't do any fad diets or anything like that. Um, I just eat very. You know, I take a very holistic approach. I'm not super heavy on the carb because I am using UCAN while I'm training. Um, you know, and I also have a little bit of it with my protein post race to help replenish those glycogen stores. So actually, I'm really kind of more of a nice balanced diet. Now, obviously, my caloric expenditure is much higher. So I take in about 6,500 calories a day, which is way higher than most
That's a
people.
lot. That's a
Um,
lot.
I eat a
Yeah.
lot of food, but it's not, definitely wouldn't call it keto, um, or, you know, or a fat adaptive type of diet. It's
Yeah,
really just a good
and I'm
balanced
not trying to
diet.
get you to like label a diet because I'm kind of the
Yeah.
same way. It's like I just eat to fuel myself and like I kind of based it off of feel a little bit and I don't think that and what I was gonna get to is so it's a little loaded, but like, I don't think that there's no line, right, that says like endurance athletes should be higher fat, low carb, moderate protein. Strength athletes should be high carb, low fat, high protein. Like, I think
Right.
it's dependent on the person, right?
Correct.
And like, obviously, like, some things like carbohydrates are easier to eat mass quantities of and rack up calories, right?
Hmm.
And fats are the same way, right? Fats are 9 grams
Yeah.
per, you know what I'm talking
Right.
about, nine per kcal, but
Yeah.
or 9 kcals per gram, sorry.
Per
But
gram.
I think like there's a certain way to do it, right? So, if you're getting your fat sources from good, clean sources, avocados, legumes, like animal fats, things like that, all going to be great. It's going to process in the body well. But if I'm just like loading up a bunch of butter, or I'm making an excuse because I'm a fat adapted athlete that I'm going to throw a bunch of cheese
Right.
on stuff, and I'm not trying to just crush the dairy industry here, but that just so happens to be the majority of fats.
Right.
Is that, it just it seems like, there's smart ways to do it. And so like, for me, I want to tell people like, mostly plant-based, a lot, like, your
Mhm.
carbohydrate sources coming from non-processed stuff, right? So like, if I'm eating
Right.
carbs, I'm eating potatoes, rice, some gluten-free breads and fruits. But
Yep.
supplementing something with like UCAN, where it's a super starch, it's not just sugars into your system that
Right.
as you learn exercise physiology, are quick into the body, quick out, like the sugars.
Yep.
So like candy and things like that, the goos. So the superstarch is going to be a more longer lasting, because it is a slower processing in the body. So that is going to be good
Exactly.
for an endurance athlete. So if you're eating those lower glycemic index carbohydrates, the ones that
Yep.
process slower in the body, that's going to be good for an endurance athlete. And then,
Correct.
once you burn through that glycogen, then your body's going to flip into, ketosis, or just starting to burn fat for fuel. So I think it's just
Right.
like, find that balanced diet, and then kind of figure out, hey, I feel a little sluggish with a lot of carbs, or I don't, or like, yeah, it's kind of like play around with it, experiment, but just the whole foods thing to me is the most important here. Like, can we agree
It
on that?
totally is. It totally is. And your gut health along with that diet, is big. Um, it's funny. I always joke the old school food pyramid. I'm sure everybody at one point in school, went through
Yeah.
went
Oh
over
yeah.
the nutritional food pyramid. I'm really not too far off of that. Just eating clean. I don't avoid dairy. Now I do have the two things I avoid are alcohol and sugar. Um, Alcohol, I mean, that's just kind of a personal thing. Um, but sugar's my big
Yeah.
one.
I mean, I don't avoid it at all. I'm actually drinking right now, but, but,
No, I mean, my
but
girlfriend
it's,
is a competitive athlete, and she likes a glass of red wine, in the evening. That's totally fine.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, will I say, like, is it going to benefit me in any way other than like, maybe it kind of calms me down, relaxes me a little bit. Like, maybe I sleep, if I have, let's say, like one or two,
Right.
right? I may sleep a little bit better because I go to sleep easier. Now, pounding alcohol, like if I drink a half a bottle of tequila, I'm not going to sleep well. I'm not going to get any
Right.
REM. I'm not going to get any deep. So yeah, it can be very detrimental. I think
Well,
that's like a whole nother topic, but
well, exactly. And I mean, and yeah, if we go out to dinner, I'll have a glass of red wine. Um, that's totally fine. My big changes came, we talked about earlier on in the hour. My big changes came after my cancer. Anything I can do to keep my cortisol levels, stress hormones, as low as possible, that's what I'm about. So big sugar spikes are going to increase cortisol levels.
yeah,
Alcohol, not in moderation, it's going to increase cortisol levels. Your body, obviously, from stress, I don't mean like, oh, my kids are driving me crazy type of stress. I mean like running or working out type of stress. Yes, your body's going to increase cortisol. Um, but if I can cut out any other things in my life that are going to keep my cortisol levels down, I'm all about that. I sleep better, just I feel better overall. So that's a big one, just being clean. I don't do anything besides my training. I don't do anything extreme, or what people would consider, extreme. Uh, yeah, my
Okay.
training, most people would lose,
So is
they
it, I mean,
drop their jaw.
well, okay, so take me through like a typical training session for you, like your heavy day of training.
Yeah, so I'll do one typically this month, and I'll go over this month is completely different. I'm just trying something fun and different. Um, but traditionally, I only have one, sometimes two high intensity training days, um, where I'm just like really, really going, getting out of that aerobic zone. The rest are, going to be long, slow, steady miles. Um, and I'm talking as far as my running. Um, Obviously, normally I'll be in the CrossFit gym depending on the time of season. Off season, I'm usually in there 3 to 4 days a week. In season, 1 to 2 days. But as far as my running, I'm really only doing one high intensity day throughout the week, whether that's interval work, track work, something like that. Um, the rest of my miles, a good way to think about it. And then I'll tell people who are just training, go at a conversational pace. If I can't talk to somebody while I'm running, I'm going too hard, right? Um, so
Yeah.
that's, especially with people starting out, or like, like I said, if you're running with your brother and you get to a place where you can't talk to him, probably time to back off on the pace a little bit. Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I've learned that the hard way. We've been running every day for like I think 3 weeks now, and I've learned that the hard way a couple of times. Like, we've kind of got our set path that we run, like at least we start with, and then like the amount of miles we're doing will deviate that path at some
right,
point. But I took off ahead one day and I was feeling good. Like, right, I was like, all right, I'm getting into this, and I was going, and then all of a sudden we get to like we don't, and sometimes, and this is what I'm sadistic to myself in that like I usually don't ask how many miles he wants to go because I
right,
don't want to know. I'd rather just like try and do it because like I'll get in my head. I'm a
right.
very heady athlete like that. Like I think my mentality is like my biggest weakness sometimes. That's a little candid information, but it
Yeah.
just so I'll like be like, all right, let's just fucking go. And so this day I'm like going, I'm feeling good, and I'm out in front, and I'm pushing the pace, and it's a little above conversational. We probably get to about 5 miles in or so, and I'm thinking we're at like our normal like kind of easy day turnaround point. And he's like, no, we're going this way. I'm like, fuck. So
Oh
all
snap.
right, we're going straight. We're keeping going, and so like we've kind of gone straight this whole way. So I'm thinking, okay, we're going this far out. We have to go this far back. Um, and we ended up, this is going to be very subjective to Wichita, Kansas, but we go down like this, like Douglas Avenue is like a main street here, and we go like all the way through Delano District from our neighborhood, which is very far. And like we're basically go to the end and turn around, and on the way back, I am just hurting. I'm dying because I was not eased on my way out there, and I like kind of I
Yeah.
crapped out, which is partially my fault for not asking how many he had intended to go, and so I could have like planned a warm up. But I think that's really good that's really good information for new runners. Like when distance running is like if you're planning on doing, let's say like you want to do 3 miles today, you don't hit those 3 miles as hard as you can. You do
Right.
those 3 miles at a conversational pace, just to build up the wear and tear on the legs and the feet, to get to, you know, the pounding on the muscles, to get the pounding on the feet better and more adjusted, to where like next time maybe you go 5 miles at that same pace, but you know, you're not hurting as bad. And I think
Yeah.
that to me has been this huge learning experience, because I've just never done an endurance sport. I was always, you know, basketball, football, very fast twitch movements, and then CrossFit. Sometimes, yes, we do have long duration stuff like rows, but it's not that long comparatively. And so,
Right.
you know, to me, it's been learning a whole new mindset of like that pacing coming out the gate, and really learning
Yeah.
like, okay, this is when you turn it on. But so what is your best advice for somebody that is just starting out on like a running program? Maybe they want to do let's say a marathon, for instance, or their first half marathon. As far as like, would you say it's like kind of like just build up like time of running, like let's say like 30 minutes,
Yes.
then 45 minutes, then an hour? Don't worry about the actual miles. Don't worry about, you know, your mile pace. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I
Yeah.
made the mistake of, is like, I'm competitive. So I'm like, oh, I want to be at a 7:30 mile, you know, pace for 10 miles. No, that was
Yeah.
terrible for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's more of just getting the time under tension, and like the law, like, okay, today I went 45 minutes, today I went 50, today, you know, whatever, and just kind of
Yep.
building up that way, then looking at like the distance a little bit, and then kind of, then once you get a little more progressed, like let's say like phase 3, you're maybe looking at, okay, today we're shooting for our, you know, 8:30 mile per hour pace when we're going on an 8 miler, for instance, you know, something like
Right.
that. So
Right.
like, what's like in your eyes like the simple kind of system that somebody should follow?
Um, I mean, and obviously it's going to change a little bit from person to person. But say like you're going with like a couch to 5K. Um, a good friend of mine's wife, I'll use for an example, just got her going this past year, and she started off at first 3 days a week. Um, and I just said, I want you to keep moving for a mile on each of those days. Um, Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be to run. I mean, if you can do it at a slow jog, that would be fantastic. Um, but then build up that in that 1 mile until you can. So,
Mm-hmm.
in, you know, she stayed on 1 mile, I think, for 2.5 or 3 weeks, because it took her that long to get to where she could stay at a run, a slow. It was, you know, like a 11-minute pace or something, but to where she could consistently do a mile. So, I mean, I think the first week or so, she would probably, you know, run for maybe 400 meters before she had to walk, you know, and then maybe the second time she made about 500 meters, 600 meters, you know, so on and so forth. Um, but the biggest thing is don't build too quickly. It's, you know, I always say err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
If you haven't been training, so that's your, like I said, your basic couch to 5K. You know, then if you would go to somebody like you who's been doing a completely
Yeah,
different type of
that
sport.
is a person who's untrained, essentially, right?
Correct. And then somebody who, you know, has been like yourself, has been doing a different sport. You know, y'all are being pretty good about it. You know your body well enough to, you're like, okay, three wasn't bad. Let's bump it up to 4 next time. Okay, 4 was okay. Let's go up to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're like, okay, I can't maintain a steady pace for 5 miles. So next time I'm going to do 5 miles again. And once I can do that at a nice steady, then I'll bump it up. Having a set plan where it's like, okay, this week you've got 3 miles on Monday, 5 miles on Wednesday, X miles on Thursday, and then your long run, on Saturday and you have to get those miles in, you know, you have to kind of play it by ear. I'm not a huge fan of those, and don't ever, have a problem with adjusting for what your body's capable of, and kind of knowing where you're at. It's good to have a plan that you can work around. But that's why there's, a lot of good programs.
Yeah.
It's Dallas Run around here. You got like Dallas
Yeah.
Run Club. You've got Luke Flocker.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've looked at a lot of like, I've just for frame of reference, just because like that is so outside of like my wheelhouse, like endurance training, running training, that I've had to go back and really like study programming. So like I can learn I know programming from a strength conditioning standpoint, from a CrossFit standpoint, from a bodybuilding standpoint, but I didn't really know programming for endurance running a standpoint. So like, as like my goal specifically is to do a marathon, at this point 15 miles is the longest I've run in one session, one run. So I've started looking at marathon training, and as I was looking through different trainings, Olympic team, collegiate teams, whatever, it seemed like most of them all had one long training day, and then a bunch of like shorter kind of like moderate ones throughout the week. So
Correct.
Would you say that that's pretty transcendent through like how you do as well? Like, are you have like
Yes,
one big bulk day and then a bunch of kind of like, we're touching maybe 60 to 70%, but we're not really hitting that threshold?
correct. Yeah, like you're just wanting to get those miles in. Traditionally, my long run is going to be on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday. And then throughout the course of the week, I'm either just getting in miles, I'm doing speed work, because I don't just do the long stuff. I'll do shorter course stuff too, where it's, a 5K or less. I'll do some speed work. I'll do some
Yeah, and
interval
I think
work.
that's specific to like, especially like the OCR stuff, is because sometimes like, even though like the whole duration of the course may be 12 miles or whatever, there may be 23 obstacles. So it's like you are only running maybe 500 meters or like a half a mile or something in between obstacles. So like speed work, I definitely would come into play there. So like, I think that's a good thing too, is like differentiating your training. Like if you do have a goal of running a marathon or running, just a fast 5K time, you have to pepper in like the specific short distance, like maybe track training, like going out to the track and running 400-meter repeats or 800-meter repeats, whatever have you. I think that's pretty smart, rather than just going after miles all the time.
Right. Right. And that's, and that old school, like just get a bunch of miles in. It's just too much wear and tear on the body. Especially, if that was my only job, if my only job was to train like it used to be, my mileage is going to be higher. But then if I'm having to work and take care of a kid, I have to be quality over quantity with my training. So that's going to be probably 99% of the population. You got to find out where you can get quality work in around the family and work and everything else that you've got going on. So
sure.
it's going to
So
differ.
I think we can, I think we can kind of like can congest that information for like somebody that's new to running, is to like, don't start out trying to run your 100% every day. No, it is, you pick a time frame or a distance, and, albeit like an easy one for you to get, and run it like conversational pace. So 60 to 70% of what you're actually capable of running. And then just kind of progress that slowly over time. But that doesn't mean if I hit 15 miles last week, that was my longest run, that was the my big day, that I should be trying to hit 15 miles every day this week. No.
No,
I should
no, no, no,
back
no.
it down, doing the 5 mile, doing the 10 mile, doing the 6 mile, doing the 7 mile, whatever. And then my heavy day, that 1 day a week, maybe I'll try and reach that 15 again, but do it a little bit better,
Correct.
do it a little bit easier, or I'll stretch it for another mile or two or whatever. So it's like this small, slow progressions, but it's like maintaining that a little bit of like easy-ish medium volume through the week, and then we plan that 1 day, which for most endurance athletes, I'm finding it's typically like Sunday is like that big day for most. And so like just start small and find your way there. Like that's awesome. Well, I don't want to keep you too long, man. I know you got the girl in town, and I know your kids probably wanting some attention as well. So I want to get to the questions that we got off of Instagram. And so this one you already, I know, answered in the comments, but my boy Tommy asked what the best shoes for running are. So for the listeners, what would, like, I know that's a common question and I know the answer to this, but please just give them like the quick spiel.
Right. Just like with everything else, it's going to be different from person to person, and there are a lot of great brands out there. I run for Ultra, which are all zero drop, very natural type of shoe. I was with Nike
it's like
for
a flat shoe.
Correct. Right. The heel and the forefoot are the same height. You're not raised up.
A minimalist shoe.
Correct. But I was with Nike for a long time as well. Really the best is to go into a specialty store to get fitted, because different shoes fit different shapes feet. My feet are like Fred Flintstone, like they're big and wide, and so I need a very open shoe. I can't wear a really narrow shoe like an Asics or something like that. So go in and get fitted. In Dallas Fort Worth, you've got Luke's Locker, you've got Run On, you've got Fleet Feet now, and
I'll tag all of those in the comments as well, because I 100% agree with you. And I learned this too, just very recently, is that the shoe is completely subjective. This is like and I think in actually any sport, like you should really be paying attention to your footwear. Like I used to, and actually this is funny, like my football team, like we get the magazine, right? We pick out what cleats we want. And I was a defensive lineman. I was a defensive end. And I would always buy like the wide receiver shoes because they look the coolest, right?
Because they look cooler.
But they looked way cooler. And so they would always talk shit to me like, oh, bro, what are you wearing those shoes? Like, you ain't no wide out, Nick. And I was like, but I look good. Anyway, but like, I mean, and I actually think that like they fit my feet well. So I kind of looked out in that sense. But like, if I were to do that with running shoes, which I have, and I think that's a lot of, especially runners' mistakes, is that you just buy the cool looking Nikes, and no knock on Nike, because I love their shoes and I wear their shoes for CrossFit. And I've worn tons of other ones, but like I would buy like the Pegasus because it looked cool. But then, as I got into running, and like I actually, like when we started this, I came down here for like a long weekend, but I've now been here for 7 weeks. So like I brought no shit with me, and so like I had these like Under Armour like training shoes that were pretty light, pretty flexible, and I was running in those. And it was killing my feet, and I was dying. And so anyway, so then like I had these Pegasus, and I had my girl send them to me, and I wore those. Same thing. I was like, what the hell? So my brother-in-law, awesome. My birthday was last week, and he bought me some Hokas, and like super cushiony, really, really awesome ring cones. And like I felt so much better running. And now is a time where it's like, it's kind of hard to get into a running store. And actually, as things open up, like you're probably going to get like one-on-one appointments with these people. So actually, probably right now is the best time to take advantage of like going into a running store and get fit, because there's probably not going to be very many people in there. And like, they'll put you on a treadmill, they'll watch your stride, they'll see how your foot lands, and they will determine the best running shoes for you. So
Correct.
I think, you know, that to me, I would totally agree with you. And like, it's like completely subjective. So yeah, sorry, we went a long way on one question.
No.
Right, next
But
one.
I mean, it is big because I mean,
Do you listen to
everything
music on your long runs? Yeah, it
Sometimes
is
I do,
most important.
but yeah, sometimes I do.
Okay.
It's if I'm having a day where I'm needing a little extra motivation, which I mean, it happens. Like, there's not a single pro athlete in any sport I can't imagine that every single day wakes up and is like, I'm ready to train. I'm ready to work out. Like, you know, sometimes, you know, it's not inherently enjoyable to go out and run 30 miles for most people. But at the same
So
time,
I think you answer this question as an endurance athlete, because as I'm getting more into this thing and like watching more like YouTube videos and learning more about this stuff, is like, it's almost like, it seems to me like it's like one of those unwritten rules of like, it's frowned upon to listen to music on runs.
well, and at the same time, my big one is I can't compete with with a headset or with, you know, headphones.
Yeah.
So why am I gonna train? It's the same way you train for competition. The same way as you were saying, I'm not gonna eat one way while I'm training and then completely different on game day. So so to, you know, answer that, yes, sometimes if I'm needing a little extra motivation, and got to give another shout out, Aftershocks. I'm not wearing them right now, just like to make sure the wind. But Aftershocks don't actually go in your ears; they're bone conducting. And I say that especially for females, but also for anybody who's out running, you can still hear what's going on around you.
Oh, that's huge, because, you know, I think like with running, it's kind of, it's a probably, I don't know if it's worse, I guess, to not know what's really happening around you than like cycling is where I really feel like I really need to kind of be more aware. Like running, it's slow enough, and I usually run against traffic so I can kind of tell when a car is coming or whatever. But like, I think cycling, because you're moving at a faster space. Yeah, that's big. So aftershocks, yeah, that I'm definitely gonna look into this, because like, I think it's like, you know, my running has been with Will, my brother-in-law, recently. So like, I've had like a person to follow and like pace off of, and B, like kind of have that as like that talking, like a pacer, right? And so but I can see where, like, you know, like there's been when we did like a big run where he took off like way ahead of me because he's at a better pace than I am, is that like I kind of needed a little something to like just kind of pick me up in that moment where I was going through this stretch where I was like, shit, I'm getting to one street to the other, but like, it's like, this is like my death valley right now. Like it's tough for me to hit this like long stretch. So like, that's where I could see that really helping in the motivation. But I agree in that, like, I like it's the train how you are going to be on game day, right? So like, don't buy new shoes and wear them on game day. You know what I mean? Train in those shoes for 2 to 3 weeks so you know them. Or
get a couple miles.
You know, same thing with like shorts. Yeah, shorts and the diet. The diet was the biggest thing. It's like, don't eat differently on the day of game day. Like, eat the same as you did, maybe a little more, maybe supplement with a little more. All right. Third question, coming from my friend Diana. What's up, Diana? She asks about breathing while running. Is there a certain technique Is there, a certain cadence? Like what's your thoughts on breathing?
My college coach really changed a lot of my thoughts and how this. He's like, I was like, well, I was always like in through the nose, out through the mouth, and he's like, dude, when you're sucking wind, like just get it in however you can get it in. Um, so, for the most part, um, I don't really think about my breathing unless I get to a place where I'm starting to hurt a little bit, because that's one thing that can kind of take your mind off of your legs. And so I will set my breathing to my cadence, which is normally between 170 and 175 steps per minute. So I'll set my breathing to my cadence. So it's like, in 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, just to kind of just, center everything, get everything working good together.
And are we talking in through the nose, out through the mouth, or in through the nose, out through the nose?
I get it. I get it. Again, I take it in however I can get it in. Yeah. You know, when it's cold, I tend to breathe a little bit more through my nose. But I'm also usually wearing a buff. But yeah, I'm kind of like with my old college coach, like get it in however you can. The only time I really focus on my breathing
What's a buff?
Like you see people with it almost looks like it's almost like the mask we're having to wear now, but goes over your face and covers your neck. It's just a cloth, like a bandana that you don't have to tie, pretty much. So it just helps.
It's not like an altitude mask.
No, altitude masks are bullshit, by the way. When you're at altitude, the percentage of oxygen in the air is lower. When you put on a mask, all it's doing is limiting the amount of air that you can get in. All that's going to do is put more unnecessary stress on your body. But yeah, and it can be helpful. Again, like I said, to set it up with your cadence. Again, kind of take your mind off of it.
Well, I think it's helpful if you can learn to if you're actually learning to breathe deeper with it. But if you're just always just training short of breath, it's going to put a tremendous fucking amount of stress on your body.
Exactly.
It's terrible for you.
And then at the same time, it goes back to that conversational pace that we discussed. It's
not your respiratory is not matching your muscular output.
Correct. I was running with my girlfriend last week, and I was listening, and I was like, "Babe, are you all right? You're breathing like a freight train." I mean, because she was just like, I was like, "Do we need to back off on the pace?" And she's like, "Uh-huh." Yeah. So if you can't speak and you're just huffing and puffing like a train, back off on your pace a little bit.
That's awesome. That's really fucking good advice. Yeah. I love that because it's so true. You need to be conversational. You do not need to be worried about your mile time starting out. And that's hard for me because I, track with the Strava and whatever. And I'm competitive. So I see some people out there running fast.
For sure.
I have to know where I'm at. Right. Yeah. And I need to really take it back and just I'm worried about either the miles that I'm putting in accumulative, or I'm worried about the duration of time I'm putting in and how I feel after that certain run, rather than I'm trying to run 10 miles at a 7 pace. No, exactly. When I get to a point where I'm a really good, efficient runner and I don't hurt after 10 miles, yes, then I can think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also think and that's not to shy anybody off. It's going to take a long time before I'm going to be actually competitive or in a qualifying zone for a Boston or whatever. But I think, you really should not let that break you. You should even if you just started running tomorrow, sign up for a half a marathon, or sign up for a marathon like in 3 months. Like, just do it. Get your feet wet. Just know that the next time you're going to do better. And that's exactly what goes back to what you said at the beginning, is that like you have this drive that it's like, I'm not really worried about the medal they give me. I'm not worried about the podium spot, even though the podium spot feels nice, but I just want to know that I did better this time than I did last time.
My first Ironman was 14 hours. Like, I just my focus was just on finishing, and then
Give us some
Ironman,
perspective on what's like the fastest Ironman.
just under 8. That was this past year. 2 guys. So,
Okay. So
that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's like
So
that's your 2-hour marathon.
You got your feet wet, and
Yeah, Ironman's a long distance.
Yeah.
You know, a marathon is a long distance. If you've never run a half marathon, don't sign up for a fucking marathon. Like, if you've never done a half marathon, or if you've never done like a 5K, don't sign up for a half marathon. Do a fucking 5K. I mean, nowadays you can find every race distance working your way up. A 5K, a 10K, a 15K, you know, build up.
Or even if you can't find that, you can find a distance and like that, like, okay, Saturday the 13th is my day where I'm running my own personal, 5K, or I'm running my own personal marathon. And like, that's your day. You set it and you treat it like it's a fucking competition. Yeah, there won't be banners and bullshit afterwards, but whatever. That's right here.
Well, and plus, and like I was this way. My first marathon, I ran a full marathon about a month and a half before. It was about 6 weeks out, because I wanted to know in my head when I was hurting, at mile 22 or 23, I had that in my head, be like, you've done this distance before, like you can do it again. But I know a lot of programs build you up to about maybe 22 miles, and then they're like, oh, well, the last 4 is just mental. Yes and no. But yeah, build up. There, I've had so many friends and people who contact me, and they're like, well, I just decided my bucket list, I was going to run a marathon. I was like, oh, well, how many halves have you done? Oh, I've never run a half. I'm like, so all of a sudden you're going to go and run 26.2 miles?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand that, but hey, whatever floats your boat.
I know. And like, my ultimate goal is to be able to run an ultra, with my brother-in-law. And it was funny, like my fiance was riding the bike along with us when we did this long run the other day. And, she's like, oh, Nick, like, you totally could do it. And I'm like, babe, I gotta make it through 26.2 first.
Yeah.
Like I can't even fathom that at this point. And I know it's gonna take time. And that's actually, what drives me to like CrossFit, and what drives me to distance running is there's no end. Like, you can always get better. There's no, like, bodybuilding, like, you get to a certain point, yes, you can push for like, 1 rep maxes and stuff like that. Or if you are an actual stage competitor, like, there's some really cool things about it. But like, at a certain point, you age out of that. But for me, I was so bored in the bodybuilding thing when I was like, before I started CrossFit, that, okay, this is something that, like, you can never be too good. You can never be too good of a weightlifter. You can never be too good of a gymnast. You can never be too good at the endurance stuff. And then with like distance running, it's like, hey, you'll find a race that goes longer than the last one. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Or,
well, I mean,
you take on the Ironmans, and you kind of did it in
exactly.
reverse. So I see some people doing this trend. Is like, then you take on swimming, then you take on cycling. Like, there's so much you can do.
Which is how I started. And that's how I started. But even building up to Ironman, I did for almost a year. I only did sprint triathlons, which you're usually done in less than an hour. You're not going for 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah.
For almost a year, all I did was sprints to work on transitions, to work on, you know, going from swim to bike, from bike to, to run. It's very different. Then I started to slowly build up. I had been doing triathlon for 5 years, I think, about before I did my first full Ironman. Because that's fucking long, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
140 miles ain't no joke. So, yeah, just be smart about it, and don't be afraid to. There's so much information out there. You got to find somebody who knows what they're talking about. Which I have zero problems answering stuff for people who want to like hit me up on Instagram or whatever, because there is so much like horrible information and programming and things out there that people are like, oh, well, this looks good, or this person looks really fit, so I'm going to do what they're doing. I'm like, well, yeah, that person could have been doing steroids
Yeah,
and whatever
who
else.
knows?
For,
Yeah.
you don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bullshit out there in the fitness industry. A lot of people like, yeah, I got this body off of this like body weight program. No, you didn't. You like spent hours and hours and hours in the gym, you know?
Yeah.
But so our last question,
Yep.
is there a specific, and this comes from Will, another Will.
Yeah.
Is there a specific training to your obstacle course racing that's different from like if you were going to just do an ultra, and I say just do an ultra or a marathon?
Yeah, and we kind of touched on it. OCR requires a little more of a strength component. So, I mean, in the off season, I kind of bulk. Off season, I bulk. I mean, I put on some mass. I was at Tiger's Den 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Like really hitting it hard.
And
And
I got the
then
pleasure of coaching you those times.
exactly, and I
A lot of those
backed
times.
off on my miles and focused more on strength, and then slowly reversed that as I started getting closer to the start of season. So right now, and obviously with everything that's going on, yeah, right now I am doing predominantly body weight stuff, push-ups,
Yeah.
pull-ups, squats,
Yeah, we all are.
crunches. Yeah, but I mean, I've got pancakes. I've got I do a lot of functional work on top of just basic strength work. Now, when I was focusing more just on running, or like say I'm doing ultra, I'm gonna do a lot more high volume body weight. I'm not gonna do heavy Olympic lifting or anything like that necessarily. So I'm still going to lift, and a lot of people don't realize like the best marathoners and ultra marathoners in the world are in the weight room. They don't
Yeah.
just run.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because as a strength conditioning coach and now CrossFit coach and personal trainer, like obviously I have a huge bias towards the weight room, and I think that there is a huge place for weightlifting, and actually Olympic weightlifting to a certain extent for endurance athletes. I think the explosive, power type stuff, a little bit higher rep, less weight with good form can be super beneficial. And I think,
Yeah.
like we're training every day, we're lifting every day, we're doing heavy squats. And yes, is it optimal for like our like long distance running that we're like still doing 5x5s and shit at heavy weight? Probably not. But I don't think
Right.
that it's going to hurt me in the long run. Like I think like my training sessions aren't as good because my legs are a little more fatigued. Yes. Could I go a little further? Yes. Could I go a little faster pace? Yes. But I think that it's benefiting my tendons. It's benefiting my hip flexors. It's benefiting my glute strength. My hamstrings are strong. A lot of like, if you just do running, if you just do that, you're so quad dominant you're gonna wind
Yeah.
up with an injury. You've got to have
Yeah.
balance. We do a lot of
Yeah.
specific hamstring training. We do a lot of specific, glute work. So, I'll leave that to you as like what is like your ideal setup for, let's say we have an athlete that is training for their first marathon. What
Yeah.
is your ideal setup for them? They have access to a weight room and they can run.
Um, first marathon, really what my focus is going to be in the weight room is really going to be a lot of injury prevention. I've used the word holistic, I think, a good dozen times throughout this conversation.
I ain't mad at you.
It's not just strength. It's strength, it's mobility, it's flexibility, it's stability. You've got to hit all those. I do a lot more single leg, single arm stuff with newer athletes. A lot more pillar, a lot more core, whatever you want to call it.
Core, more relatable.
And a lot more of those basic movements. And if they can't do one of those basic movements properly, it's usually a lack of mobility or a lack of flexibility. So we're going to do stuff to focus on that. If they can't squat properly, you already named it. It's either an imbalance or a mobility or a flexibility issue. So the weight room is a great way, a more controlled way to find those imbalances. That is the killer for athletes, is imbalances. And you touched on it.
And I'm sorry to cut you off. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're seeing the video, how big my smile got when he said the unilateral work, because I'm like, I love it, because no sport is played in a straight line. Whether you're running, yes, you are ideally running in a straight line, but there's shit in the way, man. Like, and like you're getting tired. Your gait's not going to be the same.
Surface,
Exactly. And especially if you're playing like team sports, it's lateral, it's diagonal, it's whatever. And like, so building up the tendon strength in a particular leg is so key to like being able to manage injury and injury prevention. And then, like you said, mobility and focusing on form of movement. I'm going to free plug here, GoWOD, but I've been doing GoWODs every single day. I have the time right now because I'm not in the gym training all my clients, unfortunately. But so I have the time to like sit down and like do my GoWOD for 15 to 22 minutes, and then do like some really functional type fitness, and then go on these long runs. And I've completely fallen in love with like that style of unilateral work. It's strengthening one leg at a time, because we're not all built symmetrical. We may have like, for me, I have 3 ACL reconstructions on one knee. That knee is just never going to get to the same point that right knee is. So me strengthening up those legs in a different pattern, not always bilateral, meaning 2 legs at a time, is going to benefit me way more than like, if you've never had an injury, yes, you can probably go and bilateral squat all day. But for me, it's not going to work that way. My legs just aren't the same. I have to differentiate that training. And and that's the way that I'm going to stay injury free.
And then just one last thing on that, not necessarily involves strength, but proper running mechanics are huge. Running, and the human body is meant to be a glute, hamstring dominant moving machine. The human body is. Why do you think track athletes have big asses and hamstrings? Because they're using those big muscles to propel themselves forward. It is not a quad dominant activity. So if you're not running properly, you're putting unnecessary stress on your body. You use your quads.
But wouldn't you agree though that most like endurance athletes look way different than like a traditional like track athlete? Like a track athlete, yes, like a sprinter is usually huge legs, right? Big ass, big hamstrings, and a powerful athlete, mostly fast twitch. But like an endurance athlete, generally, mostly because of the calories that they burn, are generally more lean athlete, a more slender athlete that aren't going to have that straight up glute and hamstring development.
But
So
but you're still, your primary movers are still your glutes and hamstrings.
Yeah. So with that, like, is there, in your opinion, a certain way that you should stride when running? Like, should it be a heel to toe lift off, or should it be a midfoot? Should it be a toe strike?
Midfoot.
What do you say to the people?
Yeah, midfoot all the way. Your heel is a solid bone. It's not made to absorb all of that impact. People have been kind of really tricked by the old school running shoe industry. They just figured, oh, well, there's all that cushion underneath the heel. That's where I'm supposed to land. Try running barefoot, landing heel, like running heel toe, and it's not going to feel real comfy. And you don't want to be too far forward on your toes. The ball of your foot is the widest, most naturally cushioned portion of your foot. Think about if you were jumping rope. Okay? When you jump rope, the ball of your foot touches down just a split second before the rest of your foot. I don't stay up on my toes the entire time, and I definitely don't land on my heel. The ball of my foot touches down just before the rest of your foot. The same stretch response is what's going to propel you forward when you're running. So that foot should come down underneath your hips, ball of your foot, quick off the ground. I always tell athletes, think of like a capital D you're making with your foot. You're going to try to pull it up underneath your hips and then pull it back around to where you were.
But that's a little bit of like a rounded motion, right?
It's still a cyclical motion. Yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to think. I've never heard that D thing before. So I'm trying to get it captured in my mind. So do you want to actively think about like external rotation of the hip when you're striding, or should you try and keep those hips like pistons in line?
Yeah, you want to keep everything in line. Now, obviously, your foot isn't going to go in the path of a capital D.
Yeah.
But if I think about that while I'm running, it's going to help tighten up that stride a little bit, because you don't want a long back stride. Like, you want to get that foot off the ground, back under your hips as quickly as possible, and then back around into the floor. And I can see some video.
Like pose running, right?
Yep.
It seems to be like it has a pretty predominant like heel kick up towards the butt.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you think about a D, and I'm trying to pull my foot back up underneath my hips as quickly as possible, right? I'm gonna get my foot back underneath the butt.
Man, I'm thinking of a D. Yeah. I'm
like a capital D. Sorry.
I was thinking a D this way. You're thinking a D this way. Like,
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm the idiot here. Yeah.
Under my hips, so if anybody knows
that D means like you're not looking at it horizontally. You're looking at it like.
No. If I'm going to come straight up off the ground with my foot underneath. Yeah. Go to runrx.com on Instagram.
Listening to this, you're probably like, "What the fuck?" If you're watching this, hopefully my visual fingers did the trick. Yeah. But anyway, I get what you're saying now. Now it makes way more sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. RunRx on Instagram.
RunRx.
Yes.
Or are you taking on clients right now?
I can, if people want to contact
Do
me, I
you
do have
have?
a little bit of free time. I'm currently working with several in the mornings and
Okay.
throughout the week. So if people need a little more of that visual, um, obviously that was the like super, not even the nickel version um, of running
Yeah.
mechanics.
Yeah.
So, but yes, if anybody needs to contact me,
Wow.
I am available.
Okay. Awesome. And okay, so I like to always do like a final four questions with
Sure.
everybody. Um, so short answer, what is your favorite cheat meal?
Oh, I'm a pizza guy all the way. Pizza all the way.
Okay.
I
And is
will
that
I will
usually
have
after race?
yes. After a race, I usually crave one of two things: either a Blizzard, if you're from the South,
Dairy
Dairy Queen
Dairy
Blizzard.
Queen? No, Dairy Queen's all over the place.
Okay. I didn't know if I didn't know if it was just Texas truck stop still
Yeah.
or what. But yeah, a Blizzard or pizza, or for some reason the one of the things I'm craving after a big race.
Nice.
Sometimes both. I mean, hey, I just ran
Yeah.
for
Yeah. No problem there. If you ran 20 plus miles, bro. Hey, I
yeah,
don't give a shit. You ran 3K,
yeah,
a 5K.
yeah. Have some
You
pizza
can
with your
afford
Blizzard.
yourself a pizza in a blizzard if it's like, yeah, if it's like you train towards that, right? But earn those calories.
Yeah.
All right, number two. If you could have a drink with anyone, dead or alive, like just to pick their brain, to sit there and see what's happening in the mind, dead or alive.
Oh man. I think just going off the running and just because I've got so much about him, I'd still have to, though, whatever you want to call him, Jenner would be very interesting. I'm still going to have to go with Prefontaine. Yeah.
I'm
Whatever.
sorry. I mean, yeah. Caitlyn
Um,
Jenner is
yes,
the
yes,
PC. Yes, yes.
correct. Yeah,
But
that would be
pre
interesting, but I'm gonna have to go with Steve Prefontaine. Yeah.
those are both great answers. I love it. Oh my god. Uh, all right. So usually what I ask people is for their because I talk to athletes, right? Weekend Warrior is all about that
Sure.
athlete and 9 to 5er. So I always ask them what their favorite or what their least favorite exercise is. But for you being the OCR champion yourself, I'm
Yeah.
gonna ask you what's your least favorite obstacle? What gives
Oh.
Will the biggest fucking challenge?
Uh, and it sounds totally easy. It's called the Teeter Tube, and it's a Savage race. It is a about 20-meter long corrugated like sewer piping. So it's about
Okay.
two
It's like
two
12
to
inches diameter.
yeah, maybe 2 foot diameter, and it's set on a hinge so that it moves like a teeter totter. But you climb in
Oh
at one end and you climb up until the weight tips it down and you come out the other end. Me,
God.
me being so
Claustrophobia.
me being so big, I can't get on my hands and knees. I have to like military belly crawl
But it's almost
and
like a military slash snake because I've done one of those before, dude. It sucks.
yeah, yeah. And for some reason that gives me fits. I literally got stuck in one for like 5 minutes, one race. Like my shoulders and I tried to, it was bad. It was bad. Yeah. The fucking teeter tube, Savage race. Worst. Ugh. Yeah.
Those
But
are terrible. So
yeah.
I had to do a similar one at the Tough Mudder where like it was like on an incline and then a decline. So like you had to kind of like climb up. And
Yeah.
like I'm kind of like, I was probably 190 something at the time, 6'1", and like it's wet, it's cold, from all the other people coming
Yeah. I was going to
through.
say
Like
now it's got water if it
and
didn't then.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you're like, you're not getting any traction, but I'm like army crawling in like a worm position. So my legs are like straight because I couldn't like actually like get my knees up because I would have been
Yeah.
stuck on my back. So like I get up and I get to the point where we're about to come down. And then I see my buddy behind me who I'm running the race with, and he's like 6'3", like 250, and he's just fucking stuck.
He's
And not to
stuck.
mention it's dark in there, so it's claustrophobic as fuck. A la Andy Dufresne crawling out the fucking shit tunnel in Shawshank Redemption, right? So like you can't see shit. It's claustrophobic. You also have people behind you, so you're in a hurry.
Yeah.
It's a very anxiety-driven little thing. So yes, I totally agree with you. That shit sucks. Like that's terrible. Why do you guys do that?
Yeah. Teeter tube for sure. That was a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure, bro. All right, last one.
Yep.
All right. Because this is the Weekend Warrior podcast, and we are athletes that we're working our 9 to 5. We're trying to grind in those competitions as well on the weekends. But you know what? We're looking for sponsorships. We're looking for help. We're looking for people to pay for our admission fees. We're looking for people to maybe make us a little living wage, right? So, like, what's your best piece of advice for somebody looking for sponsorships? Like, what should they do?
I mean,
Also,
just
being a
like,
man that's in the industry that sponsors athletes, so you're the expert on
yeah,
this.
yeah. I mean, really, I kind of treat it the same way you would do, like when you're trying to go, like when I was trying to go play in college. You make a highlight reel, have a resume, and send it to people. She's very well known in the endurance world, but a lot of people don't know. Like Faye Stenning is a big time Spartan racer. Um, she literally sent me her resume. Like, I've won this, I've won this, I've won this, I've podiumed this many times, I've done this race, I've done this race. I'm already sponsored by Yokohama Tires, Honey Stinger, whoever. Um, and then she also sent like a highlight reel. So, I mean, if you're going out looking for sponsors, you got to have something for them to base it off of.
You
Besides,
do. So
I've got 50,000 Instagram followers, which, I mean, that also kind of works. But
hell yeah.
just have your resume and be able to give it out the same way you would
So
looking for a job, because that's
it's like
you're getting paid to work out.
yes, exactly, right? Like it's like applying for jobs. So it's like you need to put your best self forward. Like
Yeah,
like you need to have somebody that's good at like audio and video editing, like edit like a cool clip of you, like
totally.
have your, you have your accolades, your resume, and then send it. Just send it everywhere. Like
Yeah.
and you could probably speak on this too. I had a mentor at where I did a graduate program at Wichita State, who was a strength and conditioning coach, and he told me that he sent like his resume out 75 times to 75
Oh yeah.
schools to get a strength
Yeah.
conditioning job. He heard back from one, and it was Wichita State, and he took the job there. So
Yeah.
like in our world of strength conditioning, like, and I did the same thing. Like when I first got my CSCS, I was sending my resume out left and right, and everything that kicked back to me was like, we want experience.
Yeah.
So I had to go out and get the experience.
Yeah.
But it's key. It's like these people want to see what can you bring to the table. So a good social media following is key. So be consistent with that and post like genuine shit. You know what I mean? Like don't
Right.
lie about your stuff. Like put your real self on there. And then it's I think it's part is like getting out, training hard, and doing it, living the life of a professional athlete.
Yeah.
But figuring out a way to supplement that with money, and that's the true weekend warrior. Well, Will Lawrence, thank you so much. You're a true weekend warrior. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to you. I'm definitely want you to come on again because I try and keep these things to an hour or so, and there's so much more I want to talk to you about, brother. Well, I cannot wait to get back in the gym and see you and show you how much my mile times have improved.
Heck yeah, man. Get on back down here to Texas. We'll go for a run. And yeah, don't ever hesitate to hit me up. Obviously I can talk forever. And if anybody listening, has any questions, message me and I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
Yeah, tell them where to find you. Plug your Instagram or email or whatever for your specifically and for UCAN.
Yeah. So at Jen UCAN, if you want to learn more, head to the website. I'm at OCR _ Will Da Beast, DA, Will Da Beast. And yeah, just message me and I'll answer any questions y'all have. If you need me to point you in direction of, shoes, nutrition, whatever you need, I'm available, bro.
Awesome, man. Well, when I'm coming back to Dallas on I think the 17th, so I'm definitely shooting you a text. Let's get together, brother. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Hey,
All right,
have a
buddy.
good one.